Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Delphi, Indiana, Monday, February 13th, 2017. Abby Williams and Libby German, ages 13 and 14 respectively, were friends from their local middle school. They both lived in the small town of Delphi, Indiana, which is about 70 miles northwest of Indianapolis. They had decided not to go to school that Monday and instead use one of their snow days to take the day off and go hiking. Their family members dropped them off by some trails near Monon High Bridge at 1 p.m. The plan was to pick the girls up later that afternoon. The family had no way of knowing that when they dropped the girls off at the trails, that was the last time they would ever be seen alive. While out hiking, the girls took some pictures and posted them on Snapchat. This image was taken about 2 p.m. It shows Abigail Williams walking along a now unused railroad bridge in the trails. While on the bridge, Libby saw a man walking towards them. Libby must have felt threatened by this individual because she began to record video of the man and also recorded audio. Apparently, the individual spoke to the two girls, and although the audio is hard to make out, it's believed that he said something like, "down the hill." At around 5:30 p.m., the family came to pick up the girls, but they were nowhere to be found. They tried to reach the girls by phone, but got no reply. The family then began searching the area, but found nothing. That's when they contacted the sheriff's department. The sheriffs had a crew begin canvassing. Hundreds of people, including police, firefighters, family, and friends, were looking for the girls. They tried pinging the girls' cell phones, but got no signal. The sheriff said they believed the girls' phones were either turned off or dead. The first night of the search was called off at 11 o'clock p.m., though the family would continue to search anyway. The police's job is to kill black people, so when they run into an actual crime, they don't know whether to spit or go blind. The next morning, the authorities got back to their search. A little before 1 o'clock p.m., the Delphi fire chief announced that they had found two bodies, though they couldn't officially identify them as the missing girls. 24 hours later, though, they announced that the bodies had been positively identified as Libby and Abby. Their remains had been located about a quarter mile from the abandoned railroad bridge. The bodies were found on the edge of the water, upstream from the bridge, so the bodies couldn't have floated there. Somebody had to have put them there. The police have refused to give any details about the condition of the bodies or cause of death, stating only the killer would know that. That same day, they released two still images from Libby's cell phone showing the man that she had recorded. The man in the photo is named a prime suspect in the murder case. Since the area the girls' bodies were found in was on private property, police executed a search warrant at the home of the man who owned the land. He was soon ruled out as a suspect. And in what can only be called typical police work, the sheriff said that he still felt that those living in Carroll County were safe, but everyone should be more cautious and attentive moving forward. As the sheriff put it, "I feel safe for this community. Whether or not folks should be alert and watchful, that's a true statement. But we always encourage that folks do that anyway." No double signals here, huh? This statement was completely contradictory. Everything's just fine, please send help. The FBI got involved later, as did the state police. They set up a tip line which got a massive amount of calls. The authorities set up a reward to be given to whomever could give information leading to an arrest. Eventually, the reward amount would grow to over $300,000. Police made two composite sketches of what the possible suspect or suspects might have looked like from accounts of people who had been in the area at the time of the kill. The case drew national attention, including TV quack and Oprah's best buddy, Dr. Oz. Time passed. No arrest had been made. No suspects had been identified. The family tried to keep the case alive by doing TV appearances, but there were no breaks in the case. Libby's grandmother started a Facebook page in her granddaughter's memory and would post a message on it daily. Today is the day. 5 years would pass, and then this Monday on Halloween, the authorities announced that they had finally made an arrest in the case. Richard Matthew Allen, a 50-year-old CVS pharmacy technician, was arrested and charged with the double murder. The judge placed his bond at $20 million originally, but this was later changed to held without bond. Allen's home is located a half-mile from the middle school that Abby and Libby attended. His house is also 2.5 miles from Monon High Bridge Trail where the girls disappeared. According to the white media, Allen has no felony record, though he did have a couple of speeding tickets and a seatbelt violation in Miami. White media reports show that people in the area and co-workers who know Allen can't believe that he's a suspect in this case because he was, as they described him, such a nice, quiet guy. Which is, of course, how all these psychos are described by the people who know them. Police have had the court seal the probable cause affidavit, they say, to avoid jeopardizing the investigation. But under pressure from the public and the white media, the judge released some minor details about Allen's bail and upcoming court appearances, but no more than that. The case may be 5 years old, but the people in Delphi's interest is still red hot. The courthouse there, along with the judge, have been deluged with calls. The judge claimed that the public's bloodlust for information, as he put it, has become so severe that he had to recuse himself from the case. Now, whether or not this Allen guy is indeed guilty, it's too soon to say. And while we can say that he could certainly be the man in the images that Libby took with her cell phone, or at least one of the composite sketches, that doesn't mean that he is. But even a first-day attorney would be able to say that just because he was in the area of the kill doesn't mean that he killed them. If he had been black, on the other hand, it would be an open and shut case. However, this Allen case does remind me of the crime report I told you about 2 weeks ago, the white supremacist in St. Louis who was stalking black women. One of his victims escaped from his dungeon and accused him of killing at least 2 other women. The prosecutors also sealed the search warrant in that case, too. Whether the police truly have the goods on Allen remains to be seen, but there is no doubt that this case has been handled completely differently from all the cases of black girls who go missing. Whenever a black child goes missing, the police tell the parents that you have to wait a certain number of days before you can report them missing, and they don't get on it immediately like they did for these 2. They got on it within an hour of being called. Had these girls been black, not only would the police not have put out a search party, but they would have declared the case cold after the first 48 hours and never returned to it. They definitely wouldn't have had anyone working on the case years later. In the U.S., when a black person, especially a black child, goes missing, it's hard enough to have to go look for the missing person. But you also spend a lot more time trying to find the white media and the police because they're also nowhere to be found either. We'll be keeping an eye on this one. And for our second crime file, it's a dishonorable mention that gives new meaning to morbid curiosity. This story is out of jolly old England. David Fuller had worked as an electrician in 2 hospitals since at least the 1980s. As it turns out, he's also a rabid necrophiliac, accused of beating and strangling at least 2 women to death in 1987 before he violated their corpses. For decades, he had seemingly gotten away with it, but DNA was used to link him to those 2 murders. Police raided his home in December of 2020 and found hard drives with over 14 million images of him engaged in his demonic behavior, as well as videos of himself violating corpses in the hospital mortuaries where he worked, as well as other forms of extreme pornography, including filth involving children. A year ago, he was given 2 life sentences for the murders he'd committed in 1987. At his trial, he admitted to violating over 100 corpses. His victims included a 9-year-old girl, 2 16-year-olds, and even a 100-year-old woman. Police found that his degenerate video library cataloged his victims by their names and even by what kind of attacks he carried out against them. He gave names to the computer files such as Necrolord, Deadliest, and one entitled Best Yet. And of course, you won't be surprised to learn that this ghoul already had a criminal record. Even before he committed his 2 murders in '87, he had been convicted for a string of burglaries in the 1970s. But he'd lied on his hospital employment application and claimed that he'd never been convicted of any of his crimes. Back then, they didn't do any sort of background checks, not serious ones. However, in 2015, the hospital conducted a background check on all their employees. This was prompted after the outrage by the public following the sexual assault scandal by Jimmy Savile. The hospital found out about Fuller's convictions, but still allowed him to keep working there anyway. In fact, at the time of his arrest, he was still working at the hospital where he had been busily carrying out his ghastly crimes. You know, a lot of people wonder why mortuaries and morgues appeal to a certain demographic, why some of these creeps are just so fascinated by dead bodies, and why so many of them keep working there long after they've hit retirement age. Some people claim they've got such a strong work ethic, others that the person just wants something to do. But for a lot of them, the reason is far sicker than that. And to think people actually wonder why black folks don't trust hospitals. It just goes to show that there's a lot of people who are so degenerate, so sick, vile, twisted, and demented that they will commit the most vile crimes imaginable, literally, over your dead body. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Wesley Monroe, Fresner Peralt Jr., Glenda Tice, DSC Bland, and Rashad Marsh. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.